Always good to chat with Brian Holland and, the next new thing that's coming out of Baton Rouge, because it seems like there's something new coming out of there every single day. We're going to head up to Tuscaloosa and check in with our good friend Brett Greenberg from Bama 247. Brett, how are you doing? I cannot wait for football to be back this weekend.
Yeah, we've kind of talked about it off air for a second. It's at this point where talking season's all good and fun, but it's time to go. And made a good point there about LSU kind of being in the news every single day. I think they're in the news right now with the whole NFL feeder system, if you will. So, yeah, it's a lot to talk about in Baton Rouge for sure.
I actually want to deviate here and start real quick, because when you first heard of NFL players trying to come back to college, what was your initial thought? Because, when I first heard it, I was like, all right, we've heard about the LSU to New Orleans Saints pipeline. We've never heard of the Saints to LSU pipeline.
That's a good way of putting it. It's like college football was the minor leagues to going into the NFL, and now it's back the other way. I think we probably agree here, and a lot of people do. Maybe other than everybody's in agreement, other than maybe the people in Baton Rouge. We keep bringing them up, but it's just ridiculous. You made a decision to go to the NFL, especially if you had eligibility, you shouldn't have a chance to come back.
Right.
It's just there's no rules, so I don't really blame. Ryan Day talked about it before, the Big Ten came in and said, we're not doing this. We're Ohio State. If we need somebody, if it's going to help us, we're going to look into it. Mm-hmm. Keelon Russell mentioned it as well. But it's just, there's no rules. So I guess nobody's doing anything technically wrong, but morally and, I talk about morally in the SEC and college football. Who knows how much there is of that. But it's just, I don't like it. I'm not a fan. I don't think I'm alone in that.
Yeah, I feel like the only thing that's making college football still college football is that most of the students are still taking classes. I know there's the few exceptions now where it's internships instead of classes, but no, just craziness going on in college athletics. Let's go ahead and talk about this year's Alabama team, because their quarterback last year ended up leaving for the NFL. Ty Simpson's not coming back. And Keelon Russell has been named the next QB1 for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Just what are your overall thoughts on this decision from Kalen DeBoer and company to go ahead and go with the former 5-star plus recruit?
Yeah, I think kind of looking back into his recruitment, this is a long time coming. Just what he was able to do at the high school level, and I know that was just the college level, just the way he operates, what he has in between the ears, it was absolutely the right move for Kalen DeBoer to go with Keelon Russell. I know a lot of people kind of consider, I guess, Kalen DeBoer. I've heard nicknames of Kalen DeBoring. I've heard kind of just doesn't really say much. Even when he is talking, he's not really said a lot of things. It's conservative, kind of in the media. Now on the offensive, it's not. You go for it on fourth down a lot last year under Ty Simpson. But this was the non-conservative move, if you will, comparing that to an Austin Mack who did come over with him from Washington. They convinced him to reclassify. So this is a guy that's been in the system for a very long time. I think Ryan Coleman Williams talked about it. He called him the human playbook. He knew so much about this offense, but anybody with kind of ears, eyes in that program and even on social media knows that Keelon Russell is just different. He has that it factor. Kane Womack talked about it during the media session today on Wednesday in front of reporters in Tuscaloosa. He has everything you look for in a college football quarterback. And again, I bring up in between the ears. Starting at the University of Alabama is arguably, maybe that top spot in college football. I know there's a lot of parity across the league, across the country now, but you could argue there is not. The most eyes are on you if you are the starting quarterback at the University of Alabama. And Keelon just has everything, all the tools. That ball jumps out. He's got sneaky good athleticism, was a track runner over at Duncanville, won multiple state championships there as well. So there's just continued a lot to just the whole package. And again, it wasn't that conservative choice. I think Alabama fans have been clamoring for that 5-star recruit. That's, in any program. Mm-hmm. And there's just a lot to like about the decision overall.
You talk about that Duncanville team, and I don't know if there's a more loaded team from that class a couple of years ago. I know Colin Simmons was in that class, DeCorian Moore also. So, he's had some pretty high-level guys that he's been playing with. However, you bring up a good point in being the quarterback at Alabama is going to come with some major expectations. Would you say he's under the most pressure in the SEC to perform right away just because of, the standard that is Alabama? It seems like Yes, they made it to the college football playoff last year, but the last thing we remember about that team is they got absolutely destroyed by Indiana in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, destroyed is the right word. Mollywopped, embarrassed,
Yeah.
however you want to put it. That was not a good game. It was leave a sour taste. A lot of Alabama fans' mouth. I would say he's up there with, I'd have to really take a deeper dive into it. You got to phase on Brandon, who's a true freshman over at Tennessee. Because he's a true freshman, maybe there isn't that high expectations. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure, I think, not only on Keelon Russell, but also on Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb. And you can maybe group those all three together. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, kind of famous isn't the right word, but jumped onto that screen, jumped onto the big screen, big stage with that Washington offense who had, Michael Penix, who's over at the Falcons, 3 NFL receivers, 2 very good tight ends, a good running back as well. And you just quite haven't seen that same explosivity, that same kind of really throwing the ball downfield, getting whatever you want at Alabama. So going into year 3, second year of Ryan Grubb, I think the pressure is on all of them as a whole. And it goes all the way down to the offensive line as well, which anybody who followed Alabama and most of your listeners, that offensive line was flat out terrible last fall. The running game was terrible as fall. So to answer your question, I do think there's a lot of pressure on Keelon Russell, but also there's going to be some lumps. And I hope Alabama fans understand that, no, he's not a true freshman, but he's only passed the ball 15 times. Now, 2 of those go for touchdowns against kind of garbage time in Louisiana Monroe. But yeah, there is an equal amount of pressure, but I go back to what I said kind of in the opening. He has that ability to handle that. He knows the expectation. He has everything between ears that is going to allow him to kind of, not block out the block out the haters and kind of continue to take his lumps and be a very, very, very good quarterback when it's all said and done over the fall.
How much do you think this year's schedule actually helps for his growth? Because, your first road game is up there in Lexington, and I know that fan base is probably going to be pretty excited for a new head coach, but I think a lot of people can agree that, Kroger Field isn't really the greatest SEC atmosphere in the conference. So, you take a look at the schedule. The Mississippi State game is an interesting one because Kamario Taylor could cause some fits. It seems like Lenora Sellers always gives Alabama some fits. But realistically, they aren't going to be truly tested until Georgia. How much of an advantage do you think this schedule bodes for Keelon Russell to get, his feet under him? Because he's going to have 5 starts under his belt before he plays Georgia.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think it's huge. Now, you open with East Carolina in Bryant-Denny Stadium, which I think is going to be, a good game, exciting game. A lot of people are going to be excited to see Keelon Russell. But yeah, like you said, there's not that, on the road at Texas like Ohio State's doing. There's not, Michigan, Oklahoma type of matchup for this Alabama team until you really get to that Georgia game. And even that is at home, which Alabama's had success at Georgia in the regular season. The SEC championship is a different story. You could probably bring up absolutely destroyed as a good adjective again for the SEC championship in Atlanta last December. But, at Kentucky, I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk. You're going on the road. It's Keelon Russell's first real start on the road. But comparative to other national schedules, I think there's a lot to You get Florida State at home. South Carolina, again, I think shouldn't be overlooked. You mentioned it there. Norris Sellers is a incredible talent, gives Alabama fits, has the last 2 years. Quite frankly, could have been 2-0 against Alabama. These last 2 seasons, I think Alabama won those 2 games by combined 10 points. And then at Mississippi State is one to follow as well. I'm glad you brought up Kamario Taylor. I'm an Alabama reporter, it's Alabama focused, but any opportunity I can to say how good I think Kamario Taylor is going to be, I will take it. So I'm going to say that as well. And then back to South Carolina, you've got Dylan Stewart, who's an absolute game wrecker, and bringing up that Alabama offensive line again. You've got a very young starting left tackle, which is going to be Keelan's blindside. So there's a little bit to look at there as well. But again, you don't have those giant, national tests or on the road, if you will, to get into really the thick of it, which is Georgia. Then you've got, at Tennessee, Texas A&M, LSU, Vanderbilt, and then obviously the Iron Bowl as well.
Later on in the show, we're going to talk about ESPN's top 100 college football players list for this season. And inside the top 100, just barely, is Ryan Coleman Williams there at 99. Obviously, last season did not go the way that he had hoped, or anybody around the Alabama team had hoped. What is your expectation for him this year? Because I know he talked a lot about limiting the drops this offseason, and he worked so hard at trying to get rid of the drops. What is your expectation for him going into this season?
Yeah, I think the expectation, simply put, is he's got to be the number one receiver on this Alabama offense. And I think people in the building, people outside the building know that. Like, he's got to cut down on those drops. I think he led the country in drops last fall. But I think one thing of note is, you talk to people inside the building. I think a couple of coaches have also talked about, he looks kind of like a different person. I'm speaking, on the weight, on the strength, being a leader as well. And I understand people may scoff at this, like, hey, you're getting paid X amount of money, you got to be ready to go. But this kid was like the second coming of, Julio Jones the minute he stepped on campus, and many other receivers. There's a lot on your plate. There's a lot of things going on outside of the building, whether that's going to, like, an NIL speaking event. There's doing this, they're doing that. Like, there's so many, you're getting kind of strung out. I think, going into year 3, which it's kind of crazy that he's already going into year 3, just following him down when I used to work down there at WKRG, just kind of following his, 4 or 5 touchdown games over at Saraland. But simply put, he has to be better. I still don't have an answer for what went wrong last year, but it wasn't great. It wasn't good at all. But for this Alabama offense to succeed, and I, again, bring up the young Keelon Russell, a lot of new faces along the offensive line, you got to have that security blanket. I think Ryan Williams needs to be that, because last year you look at what Jeremy Bernard was able to do, and he was very good. He was also very good in being a security blanket, kind of bailing Ty Simpson out and making plays. Ryan Williams needs to be that. And again, everybody who's down in Mobile knows the type of talent he is, and he's the first one to tell you, like, last year was bad. So that accountability part about it, I think, is impressive as well. But again, he's got to be that wide receiver 1 and be able to kind of take the top off defenses this fall.
What do you think the expectation should be about this Alabama defense? Because on paper, it looks like it should be a pretty good group for Kane Womack. And I know he talked about wanting to be more aggressive here this year. And, I mean, when you take a look at, hey, you got a young quarterback that's going to be starting for the first year, you need to have a defense that can bail him out in certain situations. Do you think that Kane Womack's group this year can bail out Keelon Russell in certain situations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they did it quite a few times last year. I pointed to the Iron Bowl in specifically getting that forced fumble. And you look at this defense, it's a lot of guys coming back, certainly in the secondary as well, like Xavier Brown, Dijon Lee, Keon Sapp, Bray Hubbard, arguably one of the best starting groups in the secondary across the country. And it's also the guys behind them. Ivan Taylor, for example, who's going to be very good and contribute as well. The inside linebacker group's a little young. They bring in a transfer in Caleb Woodson, also betting on their evaluations. Luke Metz out of the Peach State is going to be starting alongside him. And they continue to just rave and say they got bigger, more athletic, stronger along the defensive line. So a lot of those guys that maybe were starting or got significant snaps last fall are kind of maybe becoming more of a rotational piece. You've got to have 7, 8, 9 guys to play every game, significant snaps in the SEC. You bring in a Terrence Green from Oregon, bring in Devon Tompkins from USC, and then also returning some guys, London Simmons out of Mississippi, Jamarian Latham's back. You got Yanze Pierre back, Justin Hill, who's getting another year in. So the expectation, quite frankly, is for this Alabama defense to be one of the best in the country, simply put.
Last thing before we let you go, we're going to flip it over to the hardwood real quick. Alabama and Auburn announced that they will be playing an exhibition game in Birmingham here this year. Just your overall thoughts when you heard about the news.
Just crazy. I think you mentioned that they're titling it The Feud, which I think is probably a good point. I don't know if you could use, pre-war battle, whatever it may have been, but it's incredible. I think it's very good for the fans. I had heard that can't confirm, but it's going to be split like almost like a football, like a Florida, Georgia, like it just split like Auburn on one side, Alabama on the other. And it was like, if it sells out, both programs are going to get NIL money. That game's absolutely going to sell out. These people are going to treat it like a regular season game. And this will be one we look back on, I think, in a couple of years of like, if one side wins, they're going to count it as an official game. If the other, they are like in that record, you know what I mean? So I think it's very cool. I think a lot of credit goes to both programs as well. Nate Oates and Coach Pearl over there kind of just saying, hey, we're going to do this, Stephen Pearl. We want to do this in Alabama. It's pretty unique. They have 2 exhibition games. They're playing Auburn in Birmingham, like you mentioned. They also play Ole Miss in Tuscaloosa the week before. So Nate Oates is no stranger to having a ridiculous non-conference schedule, and now he's kind of saying, how can I one-up this? I'm going to have a ridiculous non-conference schedule, and then I'm also going to have two very good SEC programs come in, and we're going to play them in exhibition. So that's going to be quite a scene in Birmingham. And again, I think both of those programs, whoever wins, is going to count that towards the official record.
You think he's going to push for that being a quad 1 game for both of those being quad 1, quad 2 games?
Oh, they both if they're both on the 2 seed line or the 3 seed line, if one of them wins, hey, we beat a really good Auburn team. Yes, that's a good point. I think this game is going to be huge, and I think it's also only going to hype up one team or the other going into that year. I think their first game that they play in the regular season is January 30th, and I think they close out the regular season on March 7th as well. So it's going to be very exciting. Again, kudos to both programs for agreeing to do that and kind of put a show on for the fans as well.
Brett, always appreciate having you on to talk about all things Alabama. I see the Atlanta Braves hats in the background. My Mets are holding on by like this a sliver. After that win last night that I couldn't see because, SNY cut out a little bit too early. But always appreciate having you on to talk about Alabama.
Absolutely, guys. Simone goes to New York, and the Mets are terrible. So put 1 and 2 together.
I blame her for all of their failures this year. I'll
Appreciate
see you, man.
Patrick.
Brett Greenberg from Alabama 246.